The health of the river and the quality of the water can be traced throughout the watershed. That's why this concept is so important. Everything is connected.
What if people move into our watershed? Slowly, buildings go up and people move in. Perhaps some industry comes in. The water also makes this a prime place for agriculture. As you might imagine, how we use the water in our environment and the land around that water can have a significant impact on the water quality.
When people move into an area, the water is affected in many ways. Sometimes pollutants are added directly into the water. This is called point source pollution.
An example of this is when industry releases that water it uses directly into the environment. Industry is the biggest user of water in our society. Many chemicals can be dissolved in water for use in making products. Water is also useful in helping cool machinery so it doesn't overheat. Sometimes this water is returned directly into the environment, chemicals and all.
In response to this problem, industry is refining their processes and using less water or recycling the water they are using. Scientists are also looking at ways to clean the water before it is returned to the environment.
The other type of water pollution is called non-point source pollution. It generally comes in the form of polluted runoff. Runoff picks things up as it moves across the land and deposits them in the water system. So it's important to look at what we put on the land. It's also important to look at what we do to the land itself.
Next to industry, the biggest user of water is agriculture. If you've ever driven by a farm, it's easy to understand the amount of water required to produce and grow the crops that we eat. Aside from being a big user of water, farms also use a lot of land.
Forests and meadows are replaced by crops and grazing land for farm animals. The spongy layer of decaying plants that once held so much water is gone. Although the new crops hold some water, it's not the same. The result is way more runoff than before. There is more dirt exposed on farmland, and that ends up in the water system. Other stuff gets in the water from this increased runoff. Farms use fertilizers and pesticides to ensure high-quality crops, and livestock deposit their waste on the ground. However, the fertilizer and animal waste becomes added nutrients in the water. With increased nutrients comes more plants and microorganisms that use up the available oxygen. Some of these fertilizers and pesticides are carried into the earth and can pollute our aquifers. To help solve some of these problems, farmers have learned better irrigation techniques that use less water. They also have found other ways of controlling pests that don't use so many harsh chemicals. Instead of having fields that go right up to the water's edge, a zone of shrubs and trees is left to help stop some of the nutrients from entering the waterways.
Another way runoff is increased and polluted is in our towns and cities. Just look around. You'll possibly see roads, parking lots, buildings, all on land that used to let water seep through it. Now it directs that water some other place.
Think of all the things that might be on our roads and parking lots: gasoline, motor oil, road salt, and a lot of other litter. When runoff flows from these areas, it carries these pollutants with it. If you live in an urban area, you know that storm runoff goes into the sewers. What you might not know is that in many cases, that runoff ends up going directly into a receiving body of water, along with all the pollutants it picked up along the way. In areas without sewers where runoff is increased due to human activity, streams and rivers have to carry the increased flow of water. Remember, water is very powerful in large quantities. As the increased amount of water goes pounding through these waterways, their banks begin to wear away and more sediments are added to the water. We also put fertilizers and pesticides on our lawns. These are carried into the water system just like on farms. If people that live near a lake do this, the process of eutrophication can go too fast. We also use some dangerous chemicals in our homes. Some cleaning products, paint, and paint thinners, and used motor oil can have devastating impacts on water. People think that it's all right to get rid of this stuff by dumping it on the ground. Wrong! The Earth's superfilter has limits. These toxic chemicals can pollute our groundwater. People also put another of the Earth's superfilters to the test. Wetlands are sometimes viewed as stinking old swamps that are a waste of land. Over the years, much of our wetlands have been lost to development. People don't realize how important they really are to water quality and wildlife. When wetlands are lost, so are its abilities to control flooding and filter water. Perhaps most importantly, the habitat wetlands provide for such an amazing array of wildlife disappears as well.
As far as wetlands are concerned, we should just leave them alone altogether. Our governments have recognized the important role they play and have protected them by law in most cases, although some wetlands are still in jeopardy. To limit the impact that cities and residential areas have on our water system, people have begun to take action. This group of students is working on a stream bank cleanup.
Many cities offer hazardous waste facilities. People can bring their used motor oil and other harmful substances to these places so they can be disposed of properly. It's also very important for folks to follow directions for pesticides and fertilizers very closely. One of the biggest things we can do to help ensure water quality is to simply use less of it. The less we use, the less gets polluted. Even turning the faucet off when you brush your teeth helps save water. Imagine how much water could be saved if every kid in the world did that. Scientists are constantly working to keep track of the different ways we impact our water. The amount of oxygen in a particular body of water is something they look at. Some animals require more oxygen than others, so scientists also look for what they call indicator species, certain types of animals, fish, or insects that are normally found in certain systems. Their absence or presence can help scientists determine water quality. Sometimes scientists bring water samples to a lab to analyze them. They put the samples in super, ultra complex machines that can tell them exactly what's in the water.